Hey, everybody, and welcome to our newest project for first responder wellness. No one fights alone. An in-depth conversation about mental health and addiction in the first responder space. We're joined by your hosts, Austin Pedersen and Josh Adams.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of No One Fights Alone. This is your host, Josh, and Austin is here, but we took the microphone away from him so that we can have a more effective conversation. We have very special guests with us this morning. We have two of our close friends from Deer Hollow Recovery in Utah, Jordan Lee and Matt Quackenbush, and we're just going to talk through a few things, what services they provide, the experiences and successes they're having, and any other bits of good advice we're going to have. Just for my part, last week I sat through about 3 hours of training that Matt did, and it was, I can't tell you how many times where it's like I felt like he came and put his arm on he was 300 feet away in this presentation hall, but there were several times where it's like, I'm digging around for a pen to make a note or in my phone or something like that, where it's like, that was right. I should look at things from that viewpoint. It was very much, there was a lot of stuff there that I've taken back and I've still working on and pondering. And
that's awesome.
Okay, how can I do a better job for myself? How can I do a better job for my people? So I really appreciate it. And Jordan was kind of the producer of that whole event. It was well attended here in Utah. And so anyway, I just want to turn the time over to both of them for a little bit of intro, a little background, a little overview on Deer Hollow and their programs, and we'll kind of go from there.
Get it, bro. Take it away.
I feel like Josh was just buttering you up a little bit, Matt, and I got a little bit of love. So,
well, he was a better speaker than you because you didn't speak.
He's a much better speaker than me when it comes to trauma and PTSD.
Yeah. Well, you didn't speak at all.
Matt's never even heard me do my thing.
Right.
No time like the present, dude. Let's get it.
I'll invite you sometime.
I do need to go one of the meetings that you do. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like that. I would be nervous, but I would like that. Last week was awesome, but when it comes to Deer Hollow and their services, it's weird how time flies, right? How when you're invested and you're involved in doing the work, you don't ever stop to enjoy the moment. And Deer Hollow just had our 7th birthday of having services since August of 2015. And for me with Deer Hollow, it goes back to 2014 when we found the house and we gutted it and we built it and we had a vision to create something special. And it has definitely become a sacred place for people to heal. And a big part of that is because we found people like Matt that continue to study and learn and to grow and to dig in deep when people are suffering and when they're hurting. And I've done just about every job at Deer Hollow, from janitorial to director of professional services to create events like we had last week. That was really neat. The golf tournament was amazing. The auction was amazing. The training was special. So 3 different events in 2 days. I don't think I've recovered. It's been over a week and I still don't feel okay from that. But the people that we were able to affect, the emails that I've seen come through from like you said, Matt's training. I've sat into that training probably 24 times now. And every time I hear it, he changes it up just enough to where something hits me like a dart in my heart, where I'm like, gosh, dang it, I do need to do that. I can be better. So that's a little bit about me and Deer Hollow and the services that we provide. Matt is a specialist when it comes to working directly with the clients. I've had the blessing of seeing them on the front end when they come in broken and suicidal and losing their job or their family or just not knowing what to do and not knowing what's going to happen. And then I get to see them after they've been in the gentle care of Matt and our team for 30 to 45 days, and they're on fire. They're ready to go home. They want to take on their job. They want to be a better dad. They want to be a better employee. They want to be the person that they used to be. And so for me, it's so contrast. For them, it's a gradual change. But I just know that our team, the team that's behind me when it comes to treating these people, does their job, or else I wouldn't see that effect. immediately. And then I get to do alumni events quarterly and all these other things. So I get to see long lasting events from the work that Matt gets to do.
Yeah, I've been in Deer Hall since 2017. I got I've had a lot of opportunities there to interact with clients and do groups and individual therapy, and as of late it's been more of like a, I don't know, kind of on the educational side of things, because we're out traveling around and doing all sorts of fun stuff. So it's been a different journey over the last couple of years, and Jordan and I have become, we're freaking like super homies now. We travel around everywhere. We're always going all over the place, and yeah, what's going on? I think on a larger scale, in the community of mental wellness, that's a very broad category. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of really new information that's out there, a lot of very progressive thinking, a lot of cutting edge stuff that just is so unbelievably effective compared to the stuff that we were doing 5, 10, 15 years ago, especially 10, 15 years ago, that we just have to be right on the forefront of what is effective. And so I've just kind of become, I don't know, obsessed is a good word, fixated on learning what works, what doesn't, trial and error, and being able to educate anyone and everyone who's willing to listen what it is that is cutting edge and what's working right now. And in the first responder world, basically the field of mental health is in its infancy. And what we're trying to figure out is how this specific population heals the best. Because this population, as you guys are so good at reminding me, is different than the other populations, which is a fantastic thing. And so these methods and models that have been used for the layperson or the general public, they are effective with first responders, but some methods are much more effective than others. And being able to parse that out and understand what works best, that has to happen. And we need to disseminate that information on a really large scale. And that's kind of what this podcast is doing, right? I mean, that's the whole point. And the more momentum we get behind that movement of dissemination of effective information, the more help we're going to get. But until people's ears are willing to be opened, really their hearts are willing to be opened to the new cutting edge information that we have, things won't change. And so, unfortunately, I think one of the hardest parts of working lately in this industry is there's some very significant reluctance to being open to these new methods that work really effectively. And that's been a challenge. So that's kind of like where we're at now, trying to figure out like what do we do? Where do we go?
Where do you feel like the primary sources are for that reluctance?
So one of the things I talk about when we do the presentation thing, when we go out and train, is like shame culture. Mm-hmm. And how the way shame works is it like basically slows down change, and that's a good thing. Like, can you imagine if we had if in the medical industry we're just like, oh, this new thing, we're just going to roll it out everywhere? Like, that would be ineffective. We have to be slow to change, but we also have to be willing to see that old ways aren't working and implement new things. What impedes that process is shame culture, where there's an idea that if I think in a new way or embrace new things, that makes me wrong, or
that the old stuff was wrong.
Or that the old stuff was wrong. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Yeah, it's not that the old stuff was wrong at all. It worked very, very, very well. It's just we got to pile on new ways of doing things. That's just the way things work. And being stuck is really, really, it just impairs so many people on such a large scale. And the thing that's really, and this is a big part of the presentation that I give, the thing that really kind of shocked people into being open to change was when people started killing themselves.
Yeah.
And that's freaking insane. Like that level of extremity in order for people to listen, that says a lot about a culture. And I'm not knocking law enforcement, first responder culture at all. It's a beautiful, wonderful space. Some of my best friends in the world I've ever made, I've found through this, in this world, because it is a world. It's this very unique, special, amazing place. But what's really, really, really challenging is just the amount of stuckness in the way things were. And so kind of what we've done at Deer Hollow is be really bold in what we suggest and the way that we do treatment. And that's worked in our favor quite well a lot of times.
You asked about the reluctance, and something came to mind years ago, and it's changed a little bit, but I'll never forget. It must have been 4 or 5 years ago. I had a chief call me and say, "Hey, my guy needs help. He's coming down there. He's suicidal. He just had a suicide attempt. We've got him. I'm going to bring him down right now. But I don't want anyone to know why he's coming down. Excuse me. I can't have anyone know why he's coming down. Can you talk to him and let him know that no one here at the department needs to know why he's coming there? Can we just say that he has an alcohol problem?" And at the time I'm like, no, I won't do that. It's up to him as an individual to share with the department. And not only that, I said, Chief, I would suggest when he comes back, he's going to have some shame, some guilt. People are going to want to know where he is. They're going to ask a lot of questions. And I think honesty and his integrity is going to go a long way if he can come back and share openly that he is suffering from PTSD and why he wanted to take his life. And it was more socially acceptable for them to say, yeah, he's an alcoholic, he has an alcohol problem, but yet trauma was not okay for him to share with the department. And that was a pretty common thread, 4 or 5 years ago, for a lot of people sharing that same message. Hey, we don't want him to come back and tell anybody where he was or why or what was going on. Where now they want to advocate. Some departments really want these guys to come back and share it with everyone, which is happening more and more often,
Yes.
which is what should be happening.
Yeah.
They need to share that message.
Yeah. I mean, that very much, I've had a couple of friends and associates that have gone through the same thing where it's like, hey, they went into HR, taking leave, FMLA, and they disappear. And number one, in our culture, where we are suspicious in nature and we cultivate suspicion and everything like that, well, somebody's gone for 30 days.
Yeah.
The hell do you think they were doing? A cruise? I mean, what medical procedure is a hard 30-day absentee?
Calf implants.
Right? Something. Okay. Yeah. Boob job? I don't know. Okay. So, and so it's like, you kind of know damn well where they were and what they were doing. But that secret thing, and what I found with probably all of them, they all came back, and kind of what you're alluding to is they're feeling redeemed. They've worked their way through those guilts, and they've overcome shame, and now they believe in their own self-worth and things all over again. But it's like, hide that back under the persona that left 30 days ago. And within a short amount of time, they fall back to their old habits.
Yeah. Yep. That's what shame does.
Because they're not able to live that redemption, if you will. That,
hey,
I've risen again, so to speak, but I can't tell you. Yeah. This is a secret.
Yeah. I love that redemption. You use that in your share that you did last week. It was, and a couple people picked up on it, and Brandy was sitting next to me. She's one of the people who works with us at Harlow, and she says, "That's awesome." She's like, "Redemption, that's freaking brilliant." And I was like, "That is so," because that terminology is perfect, because that's the thing we're trying to really obtain, is this redeeming quality of humanness where we can be essentially reborn.
Yeah.
And let go of crap from the past.
Guilt. Yeah. Redemption's the opposite of guilt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? And this is like I'm a big Eastern philosophy guy. Like I love Buddhism, Taoism,
Yeah.
Hinduism, all that cool stuff, yogi stuff. One of the things I talk about all the time is this constant process of death and rebirth, death and rebirth, death and rebirth. That's everything is can be viewed in those terms. And one of the most beautiful things to watch these hardened, gruff, tough, badass dudes sit there and I'm teaching them about, hey, the Buddha 3,000 years ago taught this stuff. And they really like soften and they're like, yeah, I want to be reborn. You're kind of like, I want to be redeemed. I want redemption. And then they come back and they're like, hey guys, I've been reborn. I've been redeemed. And they're like, oh, really? You've been redeemed? I don't think so. And then boom, 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 boom. They get hit with all this judgment and shame and stigma and just like, well, you were broken. You can't be fixed. And really what that is, and I'm going to call everybody out who does this, what that is you unwilling to look at yourself and your own shit that you're carrying around. And that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Because if I'm unwilling to look at my own stuff, I can't be open to the idea that I even could possibly be redeemed.
Yeah.
Everybody needs that. That's normal. Everybody's got to let stuff die and be reborn. Quick story. I had so out in California, there's like a culture of calling treatment going to Camp Snoopy. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. I think I've told you this.
No.
They call it Camp Snoopy. And so when somebody goes off treatment, they're like, oh yeah, he's off of Camp Snoopy, whatever. And so I sit down with a guy one day I'm working with, and he says, dude, I'm really worried about when I go back, they're going to be like, oh, he was off of Camp Snoopy, all this stuff. And I was like, listen, man, here's what you should do. Day one, go to Amazon, buy a shirt that has a Snoopy on it, and walk in to your department with a Snoopy shirt on. And he was like, why would I do that? I'm like, because own it, man. Who cares? You've been redeemed. You've been reborn. Like, this is a beautiful thing. Why do you need to be apologetic? Why do you need to be ashamed of the fact that you found something beautiful in your life? And he was like, oh, never thought about it like that. And I don't know if he ever did wear the Snoopy shirt. I would like to think that he did. It was really beautiful and amazing, but who knows? But that's the idea. And this is kind of the message that this podcast, I would imagine, is trying to do. Like, there's nothing wrong with what you're trying to do. In fact, there's everything right with it. And this is the best part of being human, is this growth thing that we do. And shame would have us stay stuck in this stagnant state. And if you think about stagnant whatever, think of what stagnation creates. It creates decay. It creates death. It festers. It creates infection. And that is what has happened in any culture that remains stagnant and unwilling to grow.
Yeah, I think shame is exactly where that comes from. In my learning and discovery and research and stuff like that, different people talk about, that emotion, shame, is actually one that humans do not naturally feel. It's taught. And so, yeah, we can feel guilt when we harm one another or have a bad impact on another person. And that is a real thing. But that shame piece of, I'm ashamed of myself, or I'm ashamed of this or whatever. I mean, so much of that is taught to us in our lives is, okay, well, this is because it was sinful or it was immoral or whatever the thing is. And so being able to take that and saying, okay, that's what that is.
Yeah.
It's that cesspool of idleness, of progress, whatever, because I haven't dealt with the things I feel guilty about.
Well, and it's this self-judgment, this evaluation of me as a person, that something I've done or failed to do makes me bad, unworthy of the definition that I like the best is Brene Brown's definition. Something I've done or failed to do makes me flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. So my flawedness is the thing that makes me unworthy. The antidote to that is saying, oh, we're all flawed. That's normal. It's freaking humanness. And that doesn't make me unworthy. Actually, my flawedness is what makes me a part of something. Humanness. And that's cool. And so when we hide that we need help, and we hide and when we're unwilling to ask for help, it perpetuates this shame insidiousness, and it permeates the culture, and it creates divisiveness, it creates isolation, and with enough festering and enough infection in that culture, eventually the isolation ends up looking like people feeling unloved, unwelcome, burdensome, hopeless. And that's where the suicidal stuff comes from.
Zero self-worth anymore.
Yes.
And even, I'm not even valuable as a professional anymore, let alone a human. Yeah.
I can't be me. I gotta fake it. I gotta pretend to be somebody else. I just went and got treatment. I better hide it. Right? I'm never wearing my Camp Snoopy shirt. I'm gonna lie to people and say, "Oh, where were you?" You know, like Jordan's story. You know, I got an alcohol problem. I just went, you know, as if that's the thing that drives me crazy. As if that's like better. It's so strange that is acceptable. Being like having alcoholism is more desirable than asking for help for trauma treatment. Like help me understand why. I don't know.
It's more normal.
Well, here's the thing.
It's just more acceptable,
At least they were getting him help.
right?
I mean, at least they were making the call to get this guy help. Now that I think about it, because
True, of course.
what I would like to do is to go to Home Depot and get a bunch of 5-gallon buckets and put EAP or HR department and fill it full of dirt and take it to the admin offices and then say, this is your new EAP services. Just rub some dirt on it. So anytime anyone comes in with a problem, just hand them a handful of dirt. Because that's the way that's been forever. It's just, hey, could you rub some dirt on it? Could you work it out? Hey, you know what? Take a day off. Maybe. Not anymore, right? Nobody's taking days off anymore. Now it's like, hey, can you work a double?
Yeah.
But the way it used to be is like, you know what? Take a day off. Get right. You know, get right. And so at least we're working in the right direction to get people help. There's a lot of people out there willing to help, which is really, really cool. And there's a lot of really bad people willing to help too, which is what we found out. There's a lot of services that don't offer an effective change, is what I found out in the last, 7 or 8 years. And I think everyone in this room here knows that too, is that there's places that are willing to help, but really don't have the skills to affect that type of change, because PTSD is extremely complex. You can't just have a regular therapist that's been working with kids or that just graduated that's really going to affect and challenge a type A personality like a first responder to get that change. And you can say, hey, we do EMDR, we do ART, we do CBT, we do all these things, we do all these modalities, but if you don't know how to effectively use those modalities together to a type A personality, they'll never grasp any of them. You could say, yeah, I did EMDR, it didn't work. And not
All the time.
there's no one modality for one person.
No.
That's the thing. It's like, well, I did EMDR, it didn't work for me. Good. Do something else. There's a ton of stuff that we do at Deer Hollow that Matt's effective to do, and says, you don't like that? Let's do this. There's a ton of options that we can guide these people through that they'll grasp to them. Hopefully they become an expert after 30 days of treatment and 6 effective modalities. They'll gravitate to usually 1 or 2, and hopefully that they effectively, it's just like working out, right? You can say, hey, I was really in good shape 2008. But I haven't eaten good for over a decade, and I just don't feel good. It's the same thing with your mental health, is that it's something that regularly has to be attended to. And if you don't have the skills to practice those modalities and carry it with your life, you'll go right back to where you were.
Yeah, and it is. And I find that all the time with guys I meet with is the modality. That's key, is not, they come and it's like, this is what we're going to do. And that flies in the face of the way we've all been raised, excuse me, medically, if you will, where it's like, hey, I go to a pediatrician when I'm a kid and he's the one that's going to fix me.
Yeah.
And it's whatever he says in 10 minutes is the outcome. Or, if my knee's screwed up, I'm going to the orthopedic dude and he's going to talk about surgeries and stuff. But what you offer, what Chateau, the thing that I find so much value and hope and momentum behind is, it's like, yeah, hey, we're going to give you this is a toolkit, and use the right tools.
Yeah.
We're going to show you how to use these tools. You find the tools that work for you and use those tools. Don't waste your time with something that doesn't work. Focus on what clicks with you, type of a thing. And that you guys are able to offer, to a new patient, here's the a la carte menu, if you will, or a buffet. Take what you feed you, leave the rest of the stuff. I tried the pudding, I don't like it. Okay, then don't eat pudding. And I think that's what really catches on when people, what I notice when people are on the back end of their treatment cycle that they have. If they came in and they, and they find the things that are working, you know, God, they're excited about them. They're excited to take them home, and they're like, I'm excited to order me some. I'm gonna go order me a trough. I'm gonna start doing ice baths and shit like that. And it's just like,
buddy.
because
That
like,
would be good.
where 30 days ago you're like, you want me to hop into a
Freezing water. Yeah.
freezing water?
No.
No, but
What do I
they're
look
like,
like?
all of a sudden it's like, yeah, the Wim Hof, and they're like, oh shit, I actually,
Yeah, that freaking works.
it makes me forget some of my other shit because
I
I'm
know, and it lasts.
halfway frozen. Yeah,
That's the best part of the Wim Hof stuff, man. You do it in the morning, and you're like, "Wow, that day was really good. I didn't do my thing yesterday, and for whatever
Yeah.
reason, that day sucked, huh?"
Yeah.
And you really start to pay attention to it. And I've told guys about breathing and cold showers and freaking meditation and all these things that are just like, "There's no way that works. Whatever. I need some medication." And
Yeah.
they're like, "That's better than the meds. I got off my meds doing that stuff." I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, but to get motivated to do that.
Yes, that's
key.
the hard part.
So
correct.
The one pitfall that I've seen over all these years and over like 15 years in mental health departments and around, the willingness to change,
Yeah.
right? And the discipline is the hard thing, because to get you in an ice bath, you have to be hurting pretty bad, right? To get somebody to wake up in the morning and to practice a modality or to do yoga, and I'll speak for myself, I have to be in a lot of pain. Pain motivates. When somebody comes in, they become an expert. They learn a language, but if you don't practice the language, you forget it. And it's fear and pain, right, that motivate us sometimes to take action. But the thing where I've seen most people fail is the continued willingness and a disciplined approach. And one of the best things for people to continue on that disciplined approach is to carry the message to others. So when somebody's on fire and they've grasped this and they want to get up in front of the whole department and share it, or they want to go tell their whole family, this is what happened to me, this is what it took, losing my family, my job, my life, that's the kind of, those are the scenarios that it takes for most people to make these types of changes in their lives. But then to continue on that path of change, they need to share it with other people because they want to save lives. That's literally what they're doing. So rather than come back and just go on and say, "Oh, I'm better. That was really cool. That was good for me." When they start sharing it with everyone around them, it keeps the fire, and they continue to. It's hard to be a hypocrite, right? If you say you should take ice baths, you should see this therapist. I see a therapist still once a month or every other week or whatever it is. Then you're not a hypocrite. I had these issues and I was lost without it. Now here is my disciplined approach to staying well, and you should do the same thing. And that's the most success I've seen over years of people recovering from PTSD.
Well, I agree. And one of the, an analogy I've thought of before where, trying to contrast this type of thought with the way we were all raised in modern medicine, if you will, is it's like, okay, a person gets prostate cancer, gets diagnosed. How many people are out going, "Hey, everybody, I got prostate cancer"? Most people are taking care of it quietly. Okay. But once they get past it, it's not like they're going around like, "I had prostate cancer. I survived it. Let me check your prostate." But that's not what we're necessarily asking anybody to do or the expectation. But it's like, "Hey, I had prostate cancer. You should get your prostate checked." You should do the maintenance things versus, "Oh yeah, my if anybody asks me, I'll tell them, yeah, I had prostate cancer." That's not advocacy. And now part of what we are doing is we're, the people that come to us and get that help are, I feel like they're feeling like they can go back and say, "Yeah, I got that help," versus "I got to hide it," or "It's embarrassing that I had prostate cancer," which means that they stuck a camera in my ass and whatever else,
Yeah.
Did all that happen? Did you have prostate cancer?
No.
Okay.
I might have it now. I don't know. I mean,
Insurance would cover a checkup, just so you
yeah,
know.
I know.
Well,
But you're absolutely right. Like,
Yeah.
people don't want to share. They want to
No.
keep it. And with Matt touched on it earlier, is that we've been really good at treating those that seek out help,
Yeah.
right? And then following up and doing the best. The nice thing about the trainings that we've been able to do the last 2 years is that we're so reactive. The first responder community is so reactive. When everything's about to explode, we jump in and save the day. That's what you guys are. You're heroes. You save the day. You're going to fix it. And we've been proactive with education. That's been the big thing, is that when I put out a flyer a couple years ago, and I just said, hey, I wonder if somebody would want to hear this training for free. Is there a department? Is there an agency? I'll create a flyer. I'll throw it on a website. And we booked out for 18 months straight, every other week. Now, when you do a free training, and when you're training people about PTSD and trauma and mental health and all these things, they don't want to hear it, right? Half of them, all of them should be there. There's nobody that's listening to this call or in this room that can improve themselves as an individual and work towards their mental health becoming better. But the people that have their arms folded, that most all of you sit in the back of the room anyway, but I'm gonna fix that in our next training. I'm gonna flip the room after we start the training. I'm gonna say, everyone stand up and pick up your chairs and turn around. The training's happening from this side of the room, because those in the back of the room with their arms folded, I believe, are the ones hurting the most.
Oh yeah.
I'm here because I have to be, not because I'm really interested in this message.
And those that have to be are those the ones that are hiding and protecting themselves. They have 100%. The biggest armor, the biggest walls built up around them. And it's easy to see after you've seen it for so long. It's easy for Jared and for Matt and me and for Josh to look and say, that guy's hurting, you know? And that's the way it's been. It's been so nice to say, hey, you know what? This is an in-service training. Everyone's required to go and everyone needs it. And then to see the body language in that 4 or 8 hour period, to just think, gosh, this is needed so bad. And the guys that get up and walk out as fast as possible, eventually the good news is they'll know what it takes or where to get help, and that there's a community out there that wants to help them get better. The tough thing is that what's going to have to happen before you reach that willingness to change.
Yeah. And the thing that you hit earlier, Jordan, that was right on the money is the motivation piece. And a lot of times for humans, if it's just about me, I'm okay with some suffering. Like, I can handle this, right? I can grin and bear it. I can gut through this, right? I'm pretty strong, whatever. As long as I can hide this and it doesn't affect other people, I'm okay. And then it starts to affect other people. And your wife comes and your kids start noticing stuff. And then within us is this very powerful intrinsic motivator that I think is evolutionarily designed to keep the species going, to keep family units, to keep teams, to keep organizations propelling forward. There's this energy within the human being that you can tap into when you start doing stuff for us rather than just me. I call it we over me.
Yeah.
And it's powerful. And that's the thing that really, if people can grasp that, all of a sudden, my motivation to do something difficult, it's there. I don't have to go searching for it, right? I have this beautiful, amazing family, right? I got 4 kids, I got a wife. I would do anything for them. Freaking zombie apocalypse, I'm out there, freaking bandana on, assault rifle, like I'll do anything for them, right? Of course. So when we change the narrative from, hey, don't let anybody know that you're hurting, to, hey, be honest with your hurt, now people know. And they start saying stuff like, hey, I want you to get help because I don't want you to hurt. That feels amazing. And then all of a sudden I have this team of people buoying me up, supporting me, saying, yes, go get help, go change, because we need you. You sick and hurting, that sucks. That's a drain on our family, on our organization, on our system. We need you to be at your best so that you can do the thing that we need you to do to help us move forward. And this is that if we could somehow inject that concept into the culture of first responders, I genuinely think we would see massive change.
Absolutely.
Massive change. And one of the things that I don't know if I'm reluctant or not. I'm like maybe a little reluctant. I'm back in school studying. And so I'm spending like 5 to 10 hours a week, every week, combing through academic literature. And I found this cool program where they have a track that's just trauma. It's pretty awesome. And they're trying to, basically, I'm studying complex post-traumatic stress disorder in relation to first responders and finding all the literature on this that I can find. And there's tons of stuff out there. And I found a couple of different articles that are really fascinating. And one of them that's the most fascinating that I think is that I'm going to try and figure out how to put in the presentation. We're presenting at the Utah Fall Conference here in next month, Utah Addiction Conference, and this will be in that presentation.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah, out at the Zermatt. That's gonna be a fun one.
It's gonna be nice.
Yeah, it's the concept of post-traumatic growth, and this isn't a term that people really know or have heard, but it needs to be. It's very, very, very valuable. The concept is this. It's basically the worst moment of my life, my traumatic moment, is actually the reason why I'm awesome. That's the simplest way to put it. My traumas have given me my growth, and so I don't just try and deal with them. I own them, I embrace them, and I realize that the reason this thing happened, the why that this thing happened, was because I became who I am because of it. And now, as I deal with the aftermath of that, I've become stronger and more capable of helping the family, the community, the organization, myself, us. It's very, very, very powerful concept, and it needs to be shouted from the rooftops to everybody. And there'll be books coming out about it. There's a lot of research going on. I really think this is kind of the future of trauma work stuff, is this post-traumatic growth idea. Great book out there called What Happened to You. It's actually by a doctor whose name I can't remember, in Oprah. It's this Conversations on Trauma book. Great. He talks a lot about it. So it's really starting to enter the pop culture kind of like space as well. But the idea that the crappy things that happen to me make me great is very cool. Because usually, how do we think of the crappy things that happen to you? Hide them, don't talk about them, don't let anybody know. Shame, 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 shame,
Yeah.
shame.
I think part of it too, part of that shift that I'm recognizing is we're moving away from, you know, a diagnosis.
Yeah,
You have
the pathology.
XYZ disorder versus this is your phenomenological difference. You know, it's not a disease. It's you changed because of that event.
Correct.
And it's okay that you changed because of that event.
Love that.
And, you know, one of the ways I look at it too is, you know, you look at a guy that's been in this line of work for years, and there's a number of places throughout that jurisdiction, maybe as a police officer. This is how I journaled this one time. There are these little grave sites throughout that community where little pieces of me died. You know, I remember this baby. I remember this mom handing me her dead baby in the living room and falling to my knees and doing CPR on it because I didn't know what else to do. And I remember, and then, okay, here's a particularly grisly murder scene or neglected kids and stuff like that. And it's like, well, yeah, little pieces of your wellness, your that person I was when I was 23, those are little pieces of him died. Okay. And it's okay to mourn those pieces, but it's also okay to believe that they can be redeemed or resurrected and grow back.
Love it.
Those things don't die. It's not that they die and we have to bury them and they're no longer part of our human nature. And they can grow back. And one of the things that helps it to grow back, I found, is it's okay to physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever, return to those grave sites the same way we do with our own loved ones and stuff. And it's like, you know, you'll go put a flower on your grandpa's, you know, headstone on Father's Day or whatever the case is. You know, it's kind of doing that same action of I'm reflecting on you in a positively mournful way, and remembering the good times and whatever, and letting that kind of regrowth and regeneration occur where, yeah, instead of that being something that I have to, I've found negative coping mechanisms. It's I've grown from it. I've grown differently. You know, I'm different now, but it's still growth. It's not replacement, it's growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When people you've lost, you memorialize them.
Exactly.
You go back and you remember what it is that you learned from those people.
Exactly.
I mean, not everybody was a nice person. Like my grandparents, I lost almost all my grandparents in the last like year and a half. It's been brutal. And my grandfather on my dad's side, he was an awesome dude. I freaking look up to that guy more than anybody. He was also a big dick half the time. He was like mean, even towards the end of his life. Doesn't mean I don't love the guy, but when you're memorializing someone, you don't throw away the negative aspects. You highlight the positives, the growth aspect of what happened. That's the same thing. When death comes along, we don't need to hide the fact that it freaking hurts.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe the fact that it hurts is the thing that's motivating. That's what Jordan was talking about. Yeah. Pain is motivating. It's very, very motivating, especially when I see that the value of that pain is that it's the thing that's making me stronger. Because without pain, we would never get stronger. We have to feel this thing in order to get better. So ignoring that only leaves me weak, which is the very thing that we don't want to be in the first place, right?
And the unity that it creates by finding strength in those incidents. When you just shared your little thing, it kind of messed me up. Josh, about the baby in the living room. I've got little babies right now, and I just thought, gosh, that's hard.
Oof.
But you sharing that with a young officer, or sharing that openly, if we own those things that happened to us or that we were a part of, and we own that they made us who we are, then when it happens to somebody else, that gives us unity and fellowship and service, where somebody says, I don't know what to do. And you can say, I've been there, I felt the way that you felt, and it's going to be okay. But if you never share that, if you never own that experience, if you never own, and that's the thing that's like, well, why do bad things happen to good people? You know, that stuff that everyone always says. Well, it's to give us strength and to join together and to be more of a we community rather than an I, and be lonely and isolated and scared. But you just sharing the stuff that, all of the experiences that you've been through, I guarantee that you sharing those and being vulnerable to share those has given a lot of strength and hope for other people to carry on. And that's what we hope all of our people do. Everyone that learns and grows, we don't just want, we need them to share those experiences. What isolated them? What broke you, right? What broke you, and how did you recover from that experience, so that other people feel like they can be redeemed, that they can have that new life, that they can feel normal again, that they can have a family and kids and be a good dad and be a good employee. So there's a lot of strength from sharing. The vulnerability that it takes is huge.
Well, and I don't know how many of your listeners know the 12 steps, but I like to use this all the time because we work a lot in the recovery community. In my opinion, the culmination, like the icing on the cake of the 12 steps, is the 12th step. And without it, the other 11 don't work.
Don't add up.
And the 12th step, cue Jordan.
When you said the growth, I was like, yeah, that's exactly 12 steps.
Yeah.
That's what saved my life, 15 years ago. That's why I am and what I am today. And as you teach something, you learn it more than if you learn something. So
what is the 12th step?
The 12th step is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and practice these principles in all of our affairs.
Boom. So beautiful.
And that's exactly what it is, because, I fumbled through 11 steps, right? And then I've solidified them as I practice the 12 by carrying the message to countless people that, whether they got it or not, I did. In my attempt to help others, I was healed. And that's exactly what it is. I can't take responsibility to save other people, but in my attempt to do so, I feel good about the redemption in my life that needs to happen, about being a good dad, about sharing those experiences. So it's 12 steps.
And in Western culture, who is the figure that we idolize more than any other? Christ. What did he do? What's his whole message? Everything that man, God, human, did was this: carry the message, give of yourself, and you will become better. And he was the best of us, and that's all he did. And I think that has some value. It really does.
100%.
Love one another. Sacrifice.
Yeah. Love. Give. It's not about you. Right? And this is what I say. Like, I work at Steps once a week. And Steps is, it's not first responders. It's ex-military. Sometimes you get first responders in there. But this is like guys, and
it's
I
a
work
tough crowd. Yeah,
it is. They're brutal. It's just like, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10
You know.
treatments, freaking severe heroin, meth. Like these guys are like on the verge of death. I see them 2, 3, 4 times in a year sometimes. You know, like we're seeing these people all the time. And the thing that I do is I freaking yell at them. I get in their faces and they love it. I'm just like, get over yourselves, right? And I kind of get a little gruff with them, like, get over yourselves, motherfuckers. Like, wake up. Like, this is not about you. Stop whining. It's not about your petty problem. Yeah, I get it. Sure, you got dealt a rough hand. So what? What are you going to do about it? Go freaking help somebody. Somebody read me the 12th step. And they stand up. Now you read it. Now you read it. Now you read it. Now you read it. Okay, what are you going to do? Oh, no, what are you going to do? And I make everybody sit and wait, and I stare at this guy right in the freaking face, and I say, what are you going to do when you leave? And you should see the whole room just get silent. And they're like, what's he going to do? And he has to go inside of his heart, inside of himself, and ask himself that question. What am I going to do to go help? How am I going to change being a selfish prick and start being somebody who gives a shit about people? Because that's my problem. And they get it. And some of them get it and it clicks and you never see them again. And it's beautiful. But until you get that, you keep coming back. And that's the one lesson we're all trying to learn. It's not about me. It's about us.
Yeah, it regenerates the warrior inside of those guys, and that's the and yeah, he's like, whatever, you know, as a veteran and stuff, service and things that might brought him to that point in his life, and where he's a victim, and I hate everybody, and I got a raw deal, and fuck the VA, and all that stuff you hear over and over and over again. But yeah, if you can tap into that warrior spirit that they had and is still there, it's been coated in rust. Yeah, those are the ones that come and yeah, they start calling each other out on their shit in groups.
Oh, I love it.
And challenging each other to be
fun.
better, and you need to own your shit and everything. And it's like, and then you, as like when I'm doing a group down there, it's just, I'm just sitting there like,
Get them.
just don't punch each other and we're fine.
You guys both do groups there? Why
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
That's my Sunday afternoons, man.
When am I going to get to do a group down there?
Talk to
This is
time,
special
man. He
invite.
put you in. You know they could use
Somebody
some
put in
Jordan
a
Lee
good
down
word for
there.
me down there. Somebody put in a good word for me.
Yeah.
No, it's actually, you know, and for me, working with those folks, just from my professional background, it's been amazing to talk about the intersections in their lives with law enforcement, because it's basically people from the same, cut from the same mold in a lot of ways.
Big time.
But the differences are very slight, and it's like they go off and fight, you know, and come back and they have their issues, and these guys have kind of stayed and fought and have their issues. And you know, and a lot of times, I mean, a number of those people, I mean, they've had significant jail stays, and you know, a lot of those guys have a tracker on their ankle and all this kind of stuff, and it's like they're sitting there talking to the chief of police, and it's like, I want to hear their story from their side, you know, and know that, hey, their perspective is true from their perspective. And then try and help them understand, okay, well, like classic ones are, yeah, this cop just totally, you know, I walked up to him and started asking him what he was doing and all this kind of stuff, and then he kind of jumped my shit. Next thing you know, I'm getting tased or da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, well, you know, and son of a bitch. I'm like, well, yeah, son of a bitch. But, you know, but at the same time, it's like, you know, did that officer know you were a veteran? Did he know about all these other things that have happened to you? No. Okay. Had he known those things, could he have potentially done something different? Yeah. Okay. What do you know about that officer? Nothing. How do you know he's not a vet? Well, I don't. How do you know he hasn't been shot? How do you know he hasn't? How do you know what he did? What do you know what kind of shit show he was in an hour ago? I don't. Okay, so we've got two people that are of this warrior mentality, and it's basically like you backed into each other and startled each other. Now you're turned and facing each other like, ugh, you know. And he had a taser and you didn't. So that's what happened. He's like, well, yeah, I guess that's true, you know. And it's helped them to kind of reason through, not that they agree with necessarily how the criminal justice system treated them, and frankly, sometimes I don't agree with the way they were treated either, but I think they understand, okay, well, here's the perspective of those frontline people the same way I was a frontline person in a war.
Yeah.
So
Well, what I do with one thing that I've found that works really well, and we're gonna take it a little gnarly here for a second. Brace yourself, folks. Is I get people to talk about their sexual abuse, and one of the things that a lot of people don't know, and research is coming out about this too in the law enforcement community and first responders and stuff like that. Like a lot of times, the motivator to why I do what I do is my abuse, and sexual abuse is one of. It's actually not one of. It is the most detrimental, abusive event that a human being could experience. We know this has been very closely researched. There's copious amounts of research that if you are sexually abused, the likelihood of you developing addiction or some sort of adverse response is extremely high, to the point where somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 9 in 10 women in recovery treatment at any given time, if they're in residential, have been sexually abused. And about half plus of men in a recovery treatment center have been sexually abused. And I say that in this room full of dudes, and then I say, okay, split it down the line. I bet half of you have been sexually abused, or had experience with sexual abuse. And I don't make anybody raise their hands, but I go, I have. And they're like, me too, me too, me too, me too. And then I say, how many of you talked about this with your therapist? 0.
yeah,
And then they start talking about it and they freaking heal. Because the thing is, going back to the post-traumatic growth thing, the darkest moment of my life made me me. My responses to that have been a microcosm of that entire event.
yeah,
And so this moment made me me. How I responded to that was a choice that I made as a young child, and I've never made another decision in my life. I made that decision. I've just made the same decision over and over and over and over and over. What if there were a new way to respond to that moment? What would you tell that little kid? Is he terrible? Is he awful? Is he bad? Is there something wrong with him? Is it his fault? No, I would never say that. I would never say that. What would you tell him? That he's loved. Tears. That he needs help. That he's alone and it's okay. And that it gets better. Tears. More tears. And then the whole room's just bawling their faces off. It's beautiful. It's amazing. And this is the kind of stuff that we just, as a society, like the amount of resistance to healing, it boggles me, because these deep festering wounds exist inside of our minds and our psyches, and they motivate our every single decision all day long, every day, and we just pretend like they didn't happen. That is so scary. And so we end up really stuck in these patterns of behaviors that are so hurtful to others, to myself, and it's needless because we know how to heal this stuff. And we mask it with staying busy, working, drinking, tons of different avoidant behaviors, right? There's so many different, the list goes on and on and on. But really the big 3 are sexual abuse, neglect, physical abuse, and then poverty. So you got your abuse, neglect, and poverty. Those 4 things, especially when they're like compounded on top of each other, the likelihood of developing severe complex post-traumatic stress disorder or severe drug addiction or whatever, ending up in the criminal system, it's very high. And this is the stuff that within the last, really, I'm not joking, 2 to 3 years, we've actually figured out. And now this is being researched and it's in academic literature, hasn't been disseminated into our culture yet. And that's the kind of stuff that's going to start coming out here soon. We're starting to see like, oh, we really know now for certain that the reason why these people are doing what they're doing is because of what happened to them when they were kids.
yeah.
Question for you though, Matt.
Yes.
So neglect or abandonment issue, right? So at Deer Hollow, we're doing nearly 40 hours a week of dedicated trauma programming. Okay, we have 12 people that come in. Everyone comes in because they have trauma or PTSD, and they're saying it's because of these horrible incidents as an officer,
right,
or as a firefighter, or as a military guy. How many hours a week of that 40 is dedicated to childhood trauma, to those things that you just mentioned?
40.
that's what's been baffling to me
Yeah.
to learn is that everyone comes in, they say, oh, I lost my friend, I did this, I had, and they're horrific, right? Pulled babies out of burning cars, their arms fell off. I mean, the stuff that I've heard in groups is bring me to tears every single time. But when they're in group and they're doing that deep trauma work, it's always childhood. It's the reason they got into the profession. At one point, when that neglect, that's physical sexual abuse or that abandonment issue happened to them, they felt powerless and helpless.
Yep.
And they knew when they got older, they would not allow that to happen to them or anyone else ever again if they had the opportunity. Whether that's a nurse or it could be a doctor, that is their why. That's why they got into the profession, not to shoot guns and do cool stuff. Do you know what I mean? It is to protect and serve. It's to help somebody else to not feel the way that they felt with their touchstone event, their traumatic event that has, whether they knew it or not, guided their whole why, their entire life. And the interesting thing is that then in helping other people, every time that incident happened, it activated neurologically that same event in their childhood, which eventually gets them to the place where they're suffering and that they need help. It's crazy.
Boom, trauma therapist. Look at that, man. That was impressive.
crazy.
That was
It's
so
that
well
whole-
done.
What happened to you?
Yeah.
Burning child in a car. What happened to you before that?
Yeah.
What happened to you before that? What happened to you before that?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, basically taking one block at a
the
time
MDR theory.
off that wall, and to find out where the footing or the foundation, whatever you want to call it, of all that rest of that shit
Yep.
is the way, you know. And it's fascinating
It
to
is.
see that in people. And my first therapist, she kind of did that to me too. The first time, and she wasn't really into the post trauma recovery or anything like that and growth. But I remember one time talking to her about a thing, and she's like, "Hang on,
Yep.
tell me more about this." And I'm like, "I'm trying to tell you about the thing." And she's like,
No,
"Tell me about this." And it's
Yeah.
like, and so it's like this little duel for a minute where it's like, I'm like, I don't know where you're not paying attention to me here. You know, you got a little hostile for a minute because it's like you're not even listening to me, and I'm paying you how much right now?
Yeah. You get all defensive
yeah.
because the ego goes,
Yeah,
oh no,
exactly.
she saw it. I can't
Yeah.
let her. I can't let her in.
Yeah, and it's kind of spooky because I'm like, I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. I'm fine. You know, that part, but yeah, then she
Fine.
keeps poking, and then next thing you know, I'm in tears, and I'm like, what the hell?
The hell?
What
Where
are you
did that
doing to
come
me?
from?
Yeah.
Well,
I was
and-
fine before I got here.
I
Yeah.
know. Well, and from the cool thing too is when you start to learn like how the brain works and how it like physically grows. The way the brain grows, we know this now. The brain grows around narratives and ideas, and it literally physically structures itself around these narratives and ideas. And the narratives and ideas that I develop about myself, the world, and others were developed in my early childhood, especially during the period of time when I began to learn how to talk. That time period is so unbelievably crucial, but we don't really remember it. So the key events that we end up working with a lot of time in trauma work, it's this wild phenomenon. It's where I can actually begin to formulate memories that have language associated with them. So it's ages 6 to 9. I would say that 80% of the work I do with people is about ages 6 to 9. And if you have an abuse, a neglect moment, whatever, between 6 and 9, that's the one that you remember the most. And that's when your brain began to formulate and create literal, physical, neurological structures around these narratives. And your brain has operated and functioned according to those neurological structures since you were 6, 7, 8, 9. And even earlier sometimes. Even earlier, especially, and the hardest thing to work with is when there's severe neglect or abandonment, and especially sexual abuse, that's pre-verbal, before you can talk. It's one of the most difficult things to work with. And so what we end up doing with people, and one of the most effective things you can do with people, because talk therapy works a lot for the stuff after 6, but the stuff before 6, it's got to be all body stuff. And so that's why yoga is so effective, because you don't even know what happened to you before 6. Of course you don't. And so we get people in yoga. That's why the breath work is so good. That's why the cold exposure is so helpful, because it's resetting your central nervous system to a new way of functioning, creating new structure in the brain so that it literally physically fires differently than it has your entire life. can you tell that this is my obsession and I'm very passionate
It's
about
cool
it?
shit.
It blows my mind. And I remember when I started to learn it, I was like, no shit. And I was like, okay. And then I got really obsessed with figuring my stuff out. And I dug deep, and I went to therapy, and I talked to my friends, and me and Amy would sit every lunch, and we would talk about stuff for years. And me and Elisa, we did traded therapy sessions with each other. These are the therapists up at Deer Hollow. And then Stacy and I did some stuff together. And then I got my own therapist again. And then I went and got a couples therapist to talk to my wife. And now my wife is going to individual therapy. And like this has been it's been awesome. And I've never been more stable, happy, safe, and capable of dealing with my own stuff. And my whole life, I've been a mess. My earliest trauma narrative was I'm a bad kid. And that began when I was 3. 2 and 3 years old. My sister was born. I became this bad kid. And I've been trying to undo that narrative my entire life. And really until about mid-30s was when I began to actually let it go. And that's not abnormal. That's actually pretty normal. That's when most people start to kind of go like, oh, I think I probably want to do some changes. It's mid-30s. It's the midlife. It's kind of cool. Anyways, we can go into that another time if you guys want. But wild stuff. Gotta love it, man. Trauma.
How are we doing for time there, time captain?
You're at an hour.
We're at an hour.
Beautiful.
Well, then let's be done. All right. So, in summary, we just want to thank Deer Hollow again. The services they're providing, and we appreciate everybody that's listening. And please take what you can from each one of these podcasts. Know that there are people actively thinking, working, and trying to find things to help you and I as we move forward. And again, part of us all being in this community is that we do not fight alone, and we wish you all the very best.
If you want to reach Deer Hollow, if you have any questions and you want to reach out to Deer Hollow, you can go to deerhollowrecovery.com, or you can call 8885-WE-KNOW, and that'll go to somebody. And whether we're the right facility or not, we won't stop until you're in a safe place.
My website is finding-strength.com. You can get all sorts of cool information there. First responders, links to my presentations, a bunch of podcast stuff. The name of the podcast is the Finding Strength Podcast. Pretty cool concept. Just recorded our 50th episode. And the idea is we get new people on and they tell their stories of strength, finding strength. It's pretty cool. Check it out. There's a lot of first responder episodes on there. Thanks for having us on. This was really great.
Thank you guys. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this segment of No One Fights Alone. No One Fights Alone is sponsored by
Chateau Recovery is a 16-bed treatment facility nestled in the foothills of the Wasatch Mountains in Midway, Utah. Chateau's First Responder Resiliency Program is designed to treat the unique challenges and issues that first responders encounter in the course of their careers. Chateau's comprehensive and highly individualized approach to treatment addresses more than just the presenting issues. It addresses the why. Each of their seasoned, trauma-trained, and culturally competent therapists utilize evidence-based, specialized therapies to treat trauma at its core and enable clients to begin the healing process while developing a resilient and healthy relationship with stress. Chateau Recovery is trusted by departments and agencies from around the country to treat responders and veterans. In fact, it is one of only a handful of facilities nationwide that is vetted and approved to treat members of the Fraternal Order of Police. For more information, or to speak to a representative, go to chateaurecovery.com or call 888-507-5031.
No One Fights Alone is also sponsored by First Responder Trauma Counselors. First Responder Trauma Counselors are subject matter experts in proactive behavioral health care for frontline workers through their National Peer Support Academy. This 40-hour all badges, all uniforms, and all scrubs educational experience helps to create caring, honest, and empathetic peer support relationships with your fellow frontline workers. The FRTC National Peer Support Academy is taught by actual first responders who have gone back to school to become culturally competent, licensed behavioral health clinicians that teach from lived experiences, not just theories from books. This fast-paced, immersive educational academy will not just change your life, it will help you save the lives of others. For additional details, visit 991overwatch.org or call 970-222-419-3. This could be the most life-changing academy you'll ever attend.